What do you think is the most boring thing in the world? Is it watching paint dry or grass grow, or is it listening to your teacher drone on and on about some historical event that happened like a million years ago? Well, if you happen to be a student at Springfield College in Massachusetts back in 1891, you'd probably say the most boring thing in the world is winter. You see, back then, winter was the absolute worst time of year. There were no video games, no internet, and all the outdoor fun stuff was off the table because, well, it was freezing outside. And so to cure boredom, one creative Canadian took matters into his own hands. His name was James Naismith, and he would go on to invent one of the greatest sports of all time. But at the time, he was just a physical education teacher who needed to keep his students active. But how could he possibly make exercise fun during the winter? Well, he came up with a brilliant idea to use their bodies and a soccer ball to mimic the movements of an outdoor game called Duck on a Rock. The only problem was finding a way to play this game inside. Luckily, James was pretty handy and figured he could solve this problem with some peach baskets. So he grabbed 2 peach baskets, nailed them to opposite sides of a balcony, and then came up with 13 simple rules to determine how the game would be played. And that, my friends, is how basketball was invented. Of course, it's not quite that simple, and there's so much more to the story than meets the eye. So let's go back to the beginning and start at the very start. In the late 19th century, physical education wasn't exactly a big deal. For most of human history, exercise was something you did while working, like farming or hunting. But as machines started taking over these tasks, it became clear that people needed to make a conscious effort to stay healthy. So in 1850, the first physical education classes started popping up in universities across America. And a few decades later, they were commonplace throughout primary and secondary schools. The main purpose of these classes was to build character and instill discipline through athletics. And the most popular sports were the same ones that are popular today: running, jumping, throwing, and hitting things with sticks. But what about when it was too cold to play outside? Well, that's where things got complicated. You see, most gym classes were held outside, and as soon as the temperatures dropped, the activities had to come to a halt. So PE teachers had to find alternative ways to keep their students active, and that's where Dr. James Naismith comes in. Born in Canada in 1861, James was a physical education teacher, coach, and outdoor enthusiast. In fact, he was the first person to scale the Canadian Rockies without any guides, and he loved nothing more than sharing his passion for athletics with his students at Springfield College in Massachusetts. But when winter rolled around, he struggled to keep his students engaged. That's when he decided to create a brand new game to beat the winter blues. Now, at the time, the biggest sporting event in America was the annual intercollegiate game of Duck on a Rock. And that's actually not a made-up sport. It was basically a combination of soccer, basketball, and field hockey. The goal of the game was to score by throwing a ball into a raised box with open sides, and James thought this could be a great inspiration for his new invention. However, playing Duck on a Rock outside required a large field and a lot of players, and James wanted to create a game that could be played indoors by a smaller team. That's when he hit upon the idea of elevating the box and using peach baskets instead. But don't get confused. We never said anything about peaches. When James went to the local store to buy peach baskets, he was actually buying what we call laundry baskets today. They were cheap, easy to obtain, and just the right height for his purposes. And so he went home and nailed them to opposite sides of a balcony. Then he recruited 9 students to play his new game, which he called Mint to Net. But within a week, he changed the name to basketball because the game involved bouncing the ball like a base. Okay, that's a pretty good story, but I've got to admit it's missing a little something. Yeah, there were peach baskets, there was a balcony, and there was even a Canadian involved. This definitely takes place in Canada, right? Well, actually, no. You see, James Naismith was a Canadian, but he was teaching at Springfield College in Massachusetts, and that's where he invented basketball. And honestly, we should probably go over the rules of this weird new game. So here's the deal. 2 teams of 5 players each try to throw a soccer ball into each other's basket. Players could run with the ball, but they could only take 3 steps before they had to stop and either pass the ball or shoot it towards the basket. If a player ran with the ball for more than 3 steps without stopping, it was a violation, and shooting the ball from anywhere inside the court was considered a foul. Players could also block the other team's shots, but they weren't allowed to touch the ball with their hands or arms. Instead, they had to use their bodies to get in the way. Also, if a player accidentally knocked the ball out of bounds, the other team got the ball back without losing a turn. And finally, the game lasted 15 minutes and the team with the most points won. Basketball was an instant hit among the students at Springfield College, and soon everyone was talking about this exciting new game. Within months, other schools started adopting the sport, and by 1894, the first intercollegiate game was played between MIT and Springfield. It was an immediate success and basketball began spreading throughout the United States. In fact, by 1896, there were 225 colleges and universities playing the sport, and in 1904 basketball was added to the Summer Olympics. However, it wasn't until the professional leagues were formed that the game really took off. On June 6, 1946, the Basketball Association of America was founded, and 2 years later it merged with the National Basketball League to form the National Basketball Association, and so the NBA was born. Today, the NBA is one of the most popular sports in the world. It draws in millions of viewers every year, and the biggest stars become household names. And it's all because of one man's quest to beat the winter blues. I mean, yeah, sure, there's been plenty of changes to the rules and the strategies over the years, and let's not forget about those crazy dunks. But it is incredible to think that it all started with a couple of peach baskets and a soccer ball. So next time you're bored out of your mind and stuck inside, just remember, if you have a ball and a basket, you have everything you need to invent the next big thing. Just ask James Naismith, the man who beat boredom by inventing basketball. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like, share it with your friends, and subscribe for more amazing stories. And if you want to know more about the strange and sometimes crazy beginnings of other sports, check out the playlist in the description. And that's all for now. Thanks for watching. See you next time.